In some respects, I think it is the most dangerous time since the 1930s. If you like, I think there is a risk of world war, the like of which there hasn't been since the end of the Second World War, although you could say the Cuban Missile Crisis was one particular point, but I don't think so. And the way a war could develop is that with the Ukrainians and the Russians bogged down in Ukraine, the West continuing to support Ukraine, albeit that support beginning to flag a bit, which is significant. And secondly, the Middle East, particularly what's called the resistance, the Palestinian resistance or the Arab resistance to the Israelis, and then over to the east, the South China Sea and Taiwan issue. You could put them all together in a catastrophic scenario. So the Middle East could spread. Iran could decide to unleash Hezbollah and to the north of Israel and unleash Palestinian resistance on the West Bank, coupled with their continuing support for Hamas, leading to an American intervention as Israel's situation became increasingly desperate, and the Chinese taking advantage of that. Because one of the things the media don't cover this very often, but you have to realize the Chinese, the Russians, and the Iranians are all talking to each other the whole time. They're in constant contact. They know exactly what each other are doing. And they do work together in a kind of loose alliance. And if they unleash this loose alliance against the West, then, and that could happen through accident, if you like, through miscalculation. The Iranians could overreach in their support for Hezbollah and other groups that they do support, like the Houthis. They could overreach. That could lead to the Americans having to become involved. And at the same time, the Chinese could opportunistically see this as a way of introducing, perhaps to start with, a modest blockade of Taiwan, as America is distracted in the Middle East and in Ukraine. And in those circumstances, the Americans would have to do something about the blockade of Taiwan as well. So I spent a lot of time talking about this. There is a scenario, so I'm not saying it's going to happen. There is a scenario where you could end up with a really major war. And the way to resist that is to make it perfectly clear, the West, to make it perfectly clear that we will be ruthless in prosecuting our interests, not that we will be half-hearted or uncertain, which is what we've been over the last 20 years.